If you were somebody who has watched WWE under the Vince McMahon era before and you decided that it wasn't for you, I wouldn't blame you. A lot of people felt that way. And it wasn't just people on social media, it was people also in the real world who went to the events. The reason why we all know this is because ticket sales were down, right? People weren't going to events, people weren't buying merchandise as much. Then Vince McMahon steps aside, Triple H comes in, and Triple H is obviously showing us a whole different version of WWE. And then you look at WWE and you look at AEW and you see two hot products. You see two products that are giving fans what they're giving their respective fans what they want. Then Vince McMahon all of a sudden crawls back and he's 77, 78 years old. People are not entertained by Vince McMahon's WWE anymore. And the reality is, this is where things get really crazy and really tricky. This is because WWE has somebody else running creative alongside with him. At least officially, they say Triple H is the head of creative. But is he really? Because what we saw on Raw doesn't necessarily depict that. And the truth is, WWE can't be telling us one thing and doing another. Good example of that is Nick Khan telling us that Vince McMahon was only back to sell the company, only for Vince McMahon to sell the company into a merger. Not even really selling the company. He merged the company with UFC, and all of a sudden, Ari Emanuel said he can't do it alone without Vince McMahon. So what does he do? He needs Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon says he's not going to do creative. Then we get WWE Raw, and then we see exactly what happens. Well, now everybody is talking about the news that it wasn't Vince McMahon who pulled LA Knight off of WrestleMania. The talk of the town is that it was Triple H's idea. Triple H made the decision to not have LA Knight at WrestleMania. We haven't seen an LA Knight mention at WWE Raw, which, to WWE's credit, to be fair to WWE, LA Knight is part of SmackDown, but not a mention of LA Knight on Monday Night Raw. Now we have to wait and see what happens on SmackDown. But why did Triple H cancel LA Knight's WrestleMania segment? Because the belief is that it was all Triple H. Well, guys, it's pretty simple. Vince McMahon says he won't be in the weeds. I think myself and other YouTubers and other podcasters have believed since day one that Vince McMahon never truly left. Even with WWE putting out a hot product, I think Vince McMahon always had an idea of who he wanted on TV, who he didn't want on TV, what things would be acceptable, what things won't be acceptable. The reality is, Triple H made the decision to not have LA Knight. Now, was it Triple H's actual decision to not have LA Knight on television, or was it Vince McMahon's decision to tell Triple H that he doesn't want LA Knight on television? We've seen Triple H actually struggle with pacing of the show before, which was one thing that it did seem kind of like an issue for WrestleMania Night 2. But was that a Triple H issue? Was that a Vince McMahon issue? We don't know. My belief is that Triple H is head of creative and Vince McMahon will keep running the shows. I think we're going to see Vince run Raw, Vince run SmackDown. I think Triple H will be involved in a certain aspect. I think the way that it appears to me is that Vince McMahon is going to be very, very, very much directing the show, but also have Triple H running the show alongside him. And when things get shitty and when things get bad, Vince McMahon is going to have, he's going to have a boss to answer to. And the reality is, Triple H just got that big raise. Triple H is getting the money. Triple H is still involved. It's Triple H's fault. I hope that's not the case. But at the same time, too, we saw how much Vince McMahon loved LA Knight. He loved him so much so that he called him up from NXT and put him as Max Dupree. And the funny thing is, a lot of people hated it. I actually didn't hate it because I liked LA Knight and I just wanted him on TV. And it wasn't like a shitty-ass gimmick. In fact, Maximum Male Models really does seem enjoyable these days. However, once we got LA Knight, I did enjoy watching LA Knight on TV far more than Max Dupree. Now, there's a reason why I'm talking about all of this, because there are some major changes coming to WWE's product, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that might be. But we got to talk about why this is so incredibly important, and that is the fact that Tony Khan is trying to step up with AEW. When speaking to Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, Tony Khan was asked if AEW could do something similar with a multi-day event. He says we could do one event spanning a weekend, and we can also do multiple events across a week. It's something that we're considering, especially as we keep entering so many new debut markets. We're looking forward to expanding and holding more huge events. I don't want to spend too much time on this. If you're Tony Khan and you're investing this type of money into your business, you should be doing this. And you should be trying to do this as soon as possible to show Endeavor that Vince McMahon is not the only major player in town. And the only reason why you do this is because the more market share you can gain, the better it is for your business overall. And if Vince McMahon is truly running WWE into the ground, this could be a major, major win for AEW. So not only does Vince McMahon need to worry about putting out the best creative product possible, but he's got to make sure Endeavor supports him in doing so. The problem is, we all know the confidence for Vince McMahon running WWE isn't that high. So ultimately, what this truly means is this is the perfect opportunity for AEW to move on up and make something massive happen. And now that Tony Khan also owns ROH, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Now, the thing is, who is truly running the WWE? With Tony Khan's AEW, whether I like AEW this week or AEW next week or 6 months from now, I like it or don't like it, at the very least, right? At the very least, at least we know it's Tony Khan. With WWE, we don't know that. We don't know if it is, in fact, Triple H or Vince McMahon. But we saw Monday Night Raw, and we all kind of knew exactly whose hands were on it. That's very interesting. WWE has some plans for some new debuts on NXT. Guys, if you missed my NXT live review, you may have seen that WWE had talked about this on their show. They have announced the debut of three NIL talents and level up competitors. So we have Tank Ledger, Danny Palmer, and Oba Femi. Femi is a Nigerian track and field athlete who was part of the inaugural WWE NIL class. He made his in-ring debut at a house show in November. He's worked several matches on Level Up since then. He's fought against Von Wagner, Javier Bernal, and Zion Quinn. I like this guy's look. I think he looks great. I think there's a lot of potential there. Danny Palmer has been on a couple of appearances, but now she's coming to NXT. She used to be a former fitness instructor, and then she did some level up matches with Lola Vice, Lash Legend, and Lyra Valkyria. Again, WWE continues to stack its women's division, so this is good. And then Tank Ledger, I just seen his weight loss transformation, which was honestly impressive. Anybody who knows anything about weight loss, it takes a lot of commitment. So I'm very curious to see how he progresses. But I thought he's looked pretty good in his level up matches. So Tank Ledger is a former defensive lineman who signed up for the NIL program in the end of 2021. We've seen him in a couple matches. And on top of that, he will be coming to NXT soon. So the NIL program, the reason why I'm talking about this is because UFC is also doing the NIL program, right? Endeavor knows that the future is creating stars. So NXT was untouched. Vince McMahon didn't have his hands on NXT. Vince McMahon was not messing with NXT. Whether you love or hate NXT, it was untouched. The reality is Endeavor knows that the future of pro wrestling and the future of MMA guarantees a better future when you are working on creating the next few stars. Now, I know maybe some of you guys don't watch the UFC, but there's a gentleman named Bo Nickel. This guy goes into the UFC with the most hype I have ever seen, but then he won his debut fight absolutely insane. Incredibly quick, incredibly skilled, and this is the type of stuff that Endeavor wants from the UFC. So don't be shocked to see WWE double down on the NIL program, especially because WWE is looking at monetizing more and more of their product. And it goes back to what we were saying about WWE advertising on their match, the ring mats and the barricades. And we're starting to see it so more on WWE, so many more times on WWE television these days. I feel like WWE is advertising. Okay, it's just what it is. And maybe it's not for you, maybe you hate it, and that's completely fine. But the reason why I'm talking about this specifically is because Endeavor is going to want to monetize every single possible penny for WWE going forward, just like they will do as well for UFC. Now, as at the end of the day, when you purchase a company or merge a company, your number one goal is the bottom line. This means that people will be let go. This means you're going to try to maximize money absolutely everywhere. And I feel like everything Nick Khan kind of spoke about in recent weeks about, pay-per-views, advertising, all of these different things, it has all led us here to Endeavor. And I think that was a big foreshadow. So not only are they making major changes to NXT in the sense of more NIL talents coming into the show, but now we're expected to see major changes to Raw and SmackDown. And my point that I'm making is this merger just happened. I know everybody's reacting to Vince McMahon coming back on Raw. And to be honest with you, I stand with you. I stand by you. I believe that Vince McMahon should not be running the program. And it pains me to say that because Vince McMahon is responsible for creating such a great WWE television a long time ago. That's not the same today, unfortunately. And for that reason, I don't want to see Vince running the creative. He could do other stuff. I don't want him touching creative. But there will be massive changes to Raw and SmackDown and NXT. And the reality is, it's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen on Friday Night SmackDown. Guys, it's going to happen over time as time goes on. And we're going to really see Endeavor involved. As much as people don't believe that Endeavor will be involved incredibly involved. I'm not even joking when I tell you. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words to think about this because Endeavor, it might not seem like Endeavor is involved with UFC. Dana White has gotten to the point where UFC is a brand where it doesn't matter who's fighting or who's not fighting. They're still going to sell pay-per-views. They're still going to sell tickets. They're still going to do these things. WWE is kind of in the same boat, but Endeavor is going to want to maximize every penny. So I expect that Triple H and Vince McMahon are both running creative, which I think that's a recipe for disaster. But I also suspect that Endeavor is going to start monetarily making money off WWE as quick as possible. That means cuts. That means more advertising. That means even though Vince McMahon doesn't like advertising on the ring, sorry, Vince McMahon, maybe Ari Emanuel does want that. And maybe that's not a bad idea either. Make that money. Make this type of money so that way you could be attractive to free agents. Because guess what? And this is the real truth. If Vince McMahon is running creative and the product isn't hot, how are you going to sign free agents? Well, the only thing left that you might be able to have to offer them is money. It's either creative and money or good money, and that's it. And some people don't mind bad creative because if they're getting paid at the end of the day, it is their job and they're going to have to take care of their families. But the more that WWE is making monetarily, the more money they can make and then more money they can use in their budget to sign top free agents. I am super curious to see how things go down. Not going to lie, I'm kind of scared as well. But also, at the end of the day, I still watch MLW and Impact and GCW and AEW and AAA and New Japan. I watch all types of wrestling. So, at the end of the day, what's really, really important is that WWE does well so every other company can do well. And if you don't think that matters, the reason why it matters is because if WWE isn't doing well, why would TV advertisers, why would investors want to get involved in the world of pro wrestling when the biggest company merged with the UFC and failed? And I have no reason to believe that WWE would want that to happen, but you never know.